everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I have to be a little quiet doing this intro. It is just about 1 a.m. Naomi and our dear little Mabel are asleep in the next room. I don't want to be too boisterous, but just boisterous enough that you enjoy the 3 minutes of this intro. Very good episode today. This is Britt Lauer. If you don't know who Britt is, I'm going to read you her bio right now. Originally from Hayworth, Illinois, actor Britt Lauer's first big role was on the short-lived 2010 Comedy Central show Big Lake. This launched her into the world of being a working actor, which included a regular role on Man Seeking Woman, as well as recurring roles on shows like Casual, Ghosted, and High Maintenance. Currently, Britt stars in the Emmy-nominated Apple TV Plus series Severance, which is easily one of the best things on TV. I hope you've seen it. If not, you should definitely seek it out. It's one of my favorite things this last year, and Britt's incredible on it. I really loved her in Casual. I think she's fantastic in Severance, so I hope you like this episode. This is maybe, I think, Britt's first podcast, according to something she said towards the end of the interview. And what a first podcast. As I plunge her into the Freudian miasma that is Beginnings, we go through her childhood and how that led to her becoming an actor, and also how that led to her loving the circus and wanting to perform in the circus, which she's doing right now at this moment. Or at least when we were recording. I think she's probably doing press stuff for Severance at this very moment. We recorded this maybe 6 weeks ago. This is all very important information that you need to know exactly when this was recorded. Anyway, I hope you like our talk, and if you do and you want to check out other episodes of Beginnings, what I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like. If you like this talk, maybe you'll like my talk with other people. You know what? I'm going to name some interviews I've done of shows that Britt has been either a recurring character on or acted in. For example, Michaela Watkins, the star of Casual. She's been on the show before. That was very good. Ben Sinclair and Katja Blickfeld, who are the creators of High Maintenance. I've talked to them both before. Chris Gethard, star of Big Lake. That was a very early one. I think we recorded that in the hallways of UCB behind the theater. Simon Rich, creator of Man Seeking Woman. And, of course, Dan Erickson, creator of Severance. I just talked to him. And, hey, what the heck? In the Apple TV Plus family, I've talked to Ron Moore, the creator of For All Mankind, and of course, Battlestar Galactica. So check out those episodes. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. A lot of amazing episodes coming up. I got a lot of musicians in the next month, including Kevin Barnes from Of Montreal. That was very lovely. Tim McAlrath. I really don't know how to say Tim's last name, but I should probably find out before his episode airs. From the wonderful band Rise Against, Half-Handed Cloud, and a ton of other great episodes coming up, so stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Britt. My square. I can't. This is a rough morning. Are you
looking at yourself too much?
Yeah. I'm constantly glancing at myself. My wife and I just pitched a show. So there were like 10 Zooms where I was constantly like staring at myself, making sure I was doing the exact same movement that I did the last time to punctuate the joke and like move in at this time. And so like I've got this like, so I keep looking at myself to make sure I'm like making the right facial expressions as if I was a robot, like learning what emotions were.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
It does. You are the new AI.
Yes. Did we go right off? Did I plunge you immediately into my anxieties? Okay. Are you an anxious person at all? Am I like, is this like, is this uncomfortable territory for you to like walk into someone else's anxieties?
No, I feel okay. I feel safe. Uh, I certainly get anxious, but I have good coping mechanisms for it.
Did you learn good coping mechanisms, or have you always had good coping mechanisms?
Learn.
What was that process like, if you don't mind me asking?
You know, a lot of my coping mechanism toolbox has been singing on my ukulele.
Interesting.
Honestly, yeah, just alone and I'll hear a song and I want to kind of understand how, like, the heart mechanics of the song, and then I clunk it out with my 4 to 5 chords that I know on my on my ukulele. And it turns out you know it's really hard to feel anxious or sad when you're holding a tiny instrument.
Sure. Well, it makes you present in a way that, like,
Yeah.
I'm just learning like mindfulness stuff in therapy now. And I'm just like, oh, right. When I'm in the moment, I can't start thinking about like how I have to go visit my parents for the first time in 3 years. And my brother-in-law is an anti-vaxxer. And so I have to worry about that and all this other kind of stuff. But then if I just imagine a blue light descending on me, then I can be here and in the moment and not have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah, being in a flow state and being present, you come from improv. So gets you, ideally, you're not in your head, you're in a flow state. And yeah, anytime you're doing something like meditating, I think, or for me, it's always been something creative that is not for the purpose of showing it to anyone else. That always gets me in a really good place, whether that's painting or scribbling or singing to myself.
Is that something you figured out on your own just through experimentation, or like in therapy, an analyst said, hey, do X, Y, or Z to kind of like get rid of anxiety?
Well, since this is a podcast about beginnings, I think I first learned it from my mom, she was a home economics teacher for 30 plus years for junior high kids. And she's just a naturally creative person. So our pantry, instead of food, it was filled with art supplies that we were able to just go in and grab at any time. And my dad did a lot of woodworking. And so it was a very kind of everyday approach to art making, as opposed to like, this is going to go in a gallery or necessarily be presented to anyone else. And I think I came back to that approach to making art as like coming out of college, and I moved to New York. And sorry, let me back this up a little bit more. When I was a teenager, my mom and I ran a small business together, face painting kids' faces at festivals and fairs. And again, a very like non-pretentious approach to art making. Like, art is for everybody; it should be accessible. And I'm so grateful for that relationship to making things, because it helps, like, for when you're making something that is needing to be for a larger audience. They kind of, for me, they give and take with each other, and so I don't know. It all happened. Oh my gosh. That was a completely run-on sentence.
Hey, not only do I talk and run on sentences, I write and run on sentences. So,
okay.
Hey, look.
Stream of consciousness.
That's my bread and butter. This is the thing. Like, my mom's an English teacher. And so, or she was before she retired. But the thing that I learned growing up was like strict grammar rules, and if it doesn't follow, X, Y, and Z, then it's not good. Capital G, good. And then as I like became a writer, and I'm like, oh, as long as someone can understand what I'm saying, I can write whatever I want. And it took a long time to kind of unwind that conceptual scheme that my parents put on me. And I'm not blaming them, by the way, but I'm just saying that they put on a very rigid, like, here's the rules, follow these rules. And then you walk into like actually making the stuff, not even just for a living, but just doing what you want. And you're like, oh, I have absolute freedom as long as I'm getting something across, the thing I want across to people.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. You've liberated me.
But I'm kind of curious. Okay, I was thinking about this. I was reading about you last night, and I was kind of curious about, like, you grew up with, I guess I'm going to call this a socialist, in quotes, kind of understanding of art for everyone, art anyone can do. And I was like, I'm curious if this is the only really businessy question I'm going to ask, but I'm kind of curious about, like, because I also have, not also, but I am like uncomfortable a little bit in this business. And I know other friends of mine who are like on the weirder end of the spectrum, or maybe a little uncomfortable in this business. And I'm kind of curious if that has ever been a problem for you, or if it's ever been an adjustment.
Wait, can you clarify the question?
Sure. Yes, that was vague. There is this kind of like, when I just like to make things, whatever, write or make videos or just write a dumb joke or whatever, right? But there's also like, I'm in a business where all that stuff can be commodified, or I'm expected to have it commodified perhaps by a representative or someone like that who is like, what can we do? Hey kid, what can we do with this to turn it into money? And I'm wondering if you had similar kinds of adjustment problems at all, or if it's a problem for you, or if you are someone who like can just easily adjust to whatever context you're in. Does that make more sense?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think running a small business with my mom, where we were essentially, earning a living from our creativity, helped me to understand acting as a business as well. They're obviously very different art forms, but something as simple as graduating from college, and my brother, who's a lawyer and like just like such a he's like a personal finance nerd, and I secretly have become that as well. He taught me how to do my own taxes when I graduated, and understanding that, okay, I'm going out for these auditions, but like I'm taking classes and those are part of a business expense, and just thinking about the whole organism as something that, most of the time when you're a painter, for example, you're not going to have your paintbrush on the canvas all the time. Sometimes you have to sweep up your studio or go buy a new canvas or talk to a gallery owner. In the same way with acting and filmmaking, you're not going to be acting most of the time. A lot of the time there's all of this admin and extra stuff that you have to do to make it through in the long term. So I think actually, my approach, my having the experience of like running a small business with my mom really helped me to contextualize like 95% of my job as an actor is up to me. It's not my agent's job to get me a job. It's up to me. We're essentially running a small business.
That's an extremely healthy way to look at this. So you grew up in a way. So, okay, sorry. The picture that I drew in my head last night, which is obviously very incorrect, was more that like you were a whimsical person and you were kind of just like, cause I started to like draw a picture where I'm like, okay. So you're doing like face painting and now you're kind of like working in a circus right now. And I drew a whimsical picture of you, but it's more like, no, you're pretty grounded, and you were not only just like brought up making art like as a daily activity, but also like with the labor of art. And like, yes, I have to like, if my dad's doing a woodworking thing after he's done, he's going to sweep up the wood chips and the shavings and all that kind of stuff. And like the actual, like, the whole, like it was only until recently, I never even thought about like painters putting the canvas on the frame. And I saw a friend of mine who's a painter, made a YouTube video of him actually like stretching out like making a frame and then stretching out the canvas. And I was just like, oh, right. That has to be done at some point.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like a certain amount of whimsy in my life. I'm drawn to awe and wonderment, but I'm equal parts really drawn to pragmatism. And, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from 20 minutes south of a town called Normal, Illinois. And I do have some of, on both sides of my family were farmers, very salt of the earth. I secretly kind of love doing like physical labor. Like whenever I go and visit a circus and get to know the circus community, one of my favorite things to do is to help them take their tent down after a weekend is over. There's something so satisfying, again, kind of that flow state of like, okay, I just pick up this pole and I put this over here. And then I pick up this other pole and I put this over here. And there's just something so, is it non-pretentious or unpretentious? I don't know. But there's something like so satisfying about that kind of physical thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it. It's the same feeling I get doing like chores around the house or something like that, where I mean, there's both a kind of like pleasure of like just being in the moment doing an activity. And then there's this other kind of like, I don't want to call it godlike feeling, but like you are creating changes in the world. So there is this kind of like your actual influence of the movements of your body are changing things in the world. And there's some kind of like very existential pleasure. And I'm making a claw with my hands. Weird. I don't know how that is. I don't know how that is exhibiting what I'm talking about, but like you are the existential pleasure in changing the world is also wrapped up in that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, finishing the dishes, tangible, done. There's something about completion in art that I think is one of the biggest challenges of finishing a project. So I'm really great with putting a deadline on the calendar, or, a friend of mine, I'd been writing this feature-length version of Circus Person for, I think I started the first draft like 12 years ago. And then every year I'd kind of like put it on the shelf and then take it back down and write another draft and then go do acting work. And then I'd write another draft. And I could have kept doing that in perpetuity because there was no one telling me I had to finish it. It was just me. And a friend of mine said, you just need to decide you're going to go into production and tell everyone you're doing it on July 2nd, And that's essentially what I did with the short version of Circus Person was like, okay, I'm doing it this summer and here's the date and I'm making a movie. Do you guys want to help me? And that really put a fire under my feet to complete, to like deliver it, to show up and do it.
Was there anything about the thought that if I don't do this, like, was there any fear of failure in there, or fear of being embarrassed because you've like set this thing and you've set this date, and if you don't do it, people are going to be like, oh, you're flaky or you're not serious or something like that?
Yeah, fear is such a valuable tool, I think. And whenever I've come to a major decision in my life, I always try to locate which decision or which choice elicits the most like valuable fear within me, because it feels like that choice, like safe fear. I don't mean like making a reckless decision, but like safe fear, that usually means there's for me, the biggest amount of growth possible. And to lean into that, okay, if I make the choice that scares me the most, it means I really have to believe in myself. And it probably means that I'll be at my growth edge. And so setting a deadline that, and professing, like holding yourself accountable with your friends and the universe. Yeah, for sure. That's a huge motivator.
Okay. I mean, just from us talking a little bit, you seem extremely emotionally healthy. And
Oh, thanks.
I'm very curious if this is something that you have come to through therapy or whatever else, or if you have always kind of been in this state since you were a kid.
Well, I've definitely had my fair share of therapy sessions. I love therapy. I think it's something everyone should or could benefit from if they're curious. They should lean into that curiosity. But I guess what I'll say is being an artist for me is a journey of self-discovery and inquiry. And so getting to know myself better through making art, I think, has helped me be a more emotionally healthy person, I would say. You'd have to ask my mom if I was like this as a kiddo, though. I don't know.
Is your childhood present for you, or is it easily graspable, or is it something you've kind of like, I don't know, not pushed aside, but I was pretty repressed as a kid, or not repressed, but alienated from my emotions. I think that's a better way to phrase it. Like, I wasn't pushing them down. I was just like watching them happen, like through a glass window. So I think unless I had like very intense emotions, I don't remember things. And it just kind of like, someone has to remind me, a friend has to remind me about something. And I wonder for you, if your past is more tangible.
Well, I grew up in 6 acres of forest, and a lot of my childhood memories are running around in nature and jumping in the pool in the backyard. And a lot of my memories are also surrounding performance because, not only did my mom have a space painting company, but she also would write plays that we would put up every year at Christmas time. She directed this kind of, it was kind of glorified karaoke a group of like teenagers, and we'd go around to festivals and charity events and nursing homes, and we would perform over like 40 shows per year from age maybe 11 till I was maybe 15. And so a lot of my childhood memories are thinking back to like plays or musicals or performances that I was in. And alongside that, I was super passionate about basketball. I was a point guard, and like all of my free time when I wasn't doing art things was like I'd be on the basketball court. I had this dream of being in the WNBA, which as a 5'6" person now is like, I never was probably destined to be in the WNBA, but I really wanted to play in college. And I came up to my senior year in high school, and I auditioned for what was like the equivalent of like the most professional kind of theater that you could do in Bloomington Normal, which was like kind of a regional theater production and of Gypsy. And I auditioned kind of on a whim, kind of thinking, oh, maybe I'll get into the chorus and get some experience. And I ended up getting the lead role of Gypsy Rose Lee. And then I found out I'd have to quit basketball in order to play this role. And at the time, you're 18, and it felt like the biggest decision of my life. And again, I went back to that. Well, which option elicits the most fear inside of me? And it was to quit basketball and to take this role on. And when I came down to the decision-making process, I was like, you know what? I can remember every show that I've ever been in, but I can't remember every game that I've played. And that felt important. That felt like significant to me.
Wait, were you that practical with that decision? Like, I can't imagine myself. I would probably have been like furious that I had to make a decision at 18 like that. Were you that like kind of like, okay, well, here's the thing. I'm going to like think back and I'm like, yes, okay, which one is more like, which do I have better memories of? Which do I have memories of, period? Like that, like that seems like an adult. It seems like you regarded that. And I'm not, I don't know if I'm saying like, were you precocious? I don't know if that's the question exactly, but like, were you that kind of like mature at 18 to be able to make that decision in such a rational way?
I mean, I think I've always felt a little bit older than I am. So maybe that's true. I mean, I feel like I'm like I don't know what age. I mean, age is an attitude, I think, but maybe I was. I guess that is sort of a mature decision to make. At the time, it just felt very much like simple. Like, oh, I hope I want to make memories in my life that are unique to me, you know, and where like I love the sensation of playing basketball, but I'm not sure if like I'm being called to if my unique expression as a basketball player is like the scariest decision that I can make.
Okay, 2 questions. One, was there any regret afterwards?
No.
No. Okay, great. So it's just like I made the decision, even if like I would say like in your lowest moments, like there was nothing. You're like, oh, that wouldn't have been like I couldn't have become like the best outside shooter despite my size.
No, you know, I actually kind of like rediscovered playing basketball this past year and just playing pickup games and playing street ball, and I still love it so much. It brings me so much joy, but I don't regret the decision that I made because, yeah, I can still go play basketball on the streets.
And then the other thing is that I think it's interesting that the 2 main activities that took up your teenage years seem to be both activities where you have to be present, where you're in a flow state. If ideally you're in a flow state when you are doing them. And I wonder if there's any significance or if it just happened to be like what you were attracted to.
That's really cool. I think that's probably true. Yeah. There's also something to do with space and like there's like a physicality to, I always think about physics. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but I also did a lot of dance when I was in high school as well. So a lot of how I approach acting these days is very physical. I do a lot of movement ahead of time when I'm preparing a role. And when I was playing Helly, I thought about her a lot as a point guard, and kind of executing these plays, you know, dashing down the hallway and doing recon strategy tactic. And so I don't know how to end that sentence.
You don't. You are now in my territory where I just trail off. I would say like,
what is that called? A dangling something?
I just call it living in the ellipsis. So,
okay.
And that's a lot of my life is living in the
ellipsis. That's what I'm doing too. Oh my gosh.
You're not going to get any judgment from this end on
Thank you.
Sentence construction or trailing off or anything. Because that's how most of my thoughts are. My brain works in such a way that like I will have a thought, and in the middle of that thought, I've had to start doing this. I will say, okay, parenthetical, and then I'll say whatever the parenthetical is, and then I'll say end parenthesis. And then I go on with that original thought if I could even remember what that original thought is. But that just thoughts keep ballooning into each other. And the only way I can kind of like function in the world is to just follow them as they come in. Otherwise, it just gets too jumbled. Yeah.
I have to write out all of my dialogue, and I draw little pictures. If there's like a word that in my brain has an immediate picture, I'll draw it. So when I'm learning lines, it looks like little cartoons. And there's something that I think it just engages a different part of my brain, first of all. And it makes it more fun to memorize lines because it can be so boring to memorize. So I make it a game in my brain, and it helps me understand the thoughts as ideas and thoughts, and not just words on a page.
Mm-hmm. Is this something that you did when you were younger? I'm just trying to like, what's interesting, that everything that like between dancing, basketball, and acting is something where you have to be extremely self-aware of your body. It's one of the big reasons I'm mediocre at mediocre actor, okay basketball player, bad dancer. It's because I'm not, but I'm also very inhibited and easily embarrassed. But I think I'm like overly self-aware of so maybe like, sorry, I'm trying to like construct this or think through this as I'm asking this question. It's like, okay. I think I'm overly aware of my body in a way that makes it like, clumsy. And I'm kind of curious, like, what is your relationship to having a physical form?
Whoa. What is your relationship to having a physical form?
Do you know what I mean? Like when you were younger, like, was it a like is having a body like being in a flow state for you? I'm like overly aware of all of my movements all the time.
Oh, wow.
And it seems like you can't like to do all of that stuff. There has to be like, you have to be aware of it, but it also has to be something that kind of like fades into the background at the same time. I'm trying to think of like the moments, like I'll never be there in acting and I'll never be there in dancing, but basketball, I certainly have attained flow moments where I just like lost track and I'm like, oh, the game's over. Or like just shooting hoops outside of my parents' house where I'm like, oh God, an hour just passed. Like that's the thing. And so like, and I think that's the state I'm trying to describe, where it's this kind of like in between state. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's somatic. I think it's sometimes why I speak and run on sentences, because I'm less of a wordsmith and more like I could just paint you the picture of it, or I could show you with my hands, or I'll do an abstract dance to try to explain it. I mean, I think part of art making is not doing the literal thing. Like if we knew what we were trying to communicate, I don't think we would make the art. Right. I think art, like, it is a question in a way. And for me, it's just always been through my body that I most, like, I have easiest access to an emotion or a feeling, or trying to translate an experience to someone else, or just to yourself for that matter, trying to understand it. Yeah, it's always first through the body for me.
Interesting. And was it always that way? Like when you were a kid, was it always like dance first? And were you ever self-conscious about any of that?
Oh yeah. I mean, speaking of like Gypsy Rose Lee playing that role, do you know that musical at all?
Vaguely, from like my mom playing like the soundtrack when I was a kid.
Yeah. So it's like about this character, Louise, who's, the sort of more shy, tomboyish sister of, it's based on a real person who existed. And her sister was the star. She was like the blonde, her name was June. And then there was Mama Rose, who was the stage mom. And so the sister June ends up quitting the act, and Louise has to kind of step out of being the tail end of a horse in the act and being the star. And she's very much the shy tomboy. And I think had my mom not gotten me out of my comfort zone of like singing and performing, like I I probably would have just wanted to be the shy kid, like painting in the corner or playing basketball or something. But I was like initially that shy kid who was like trembling with a microphone in her hand, you know.
Were you resistant to becoming more of a front-facing artist, or was it like, well, I secretly had the desire and I'm glad my mom pushed me?
It's probably more of the latter. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that I mean, my mom just believes that everyone is an artist. She's like, everyone should be singing and dancing and making things. And so it wasn't, I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, you're meant to do this. It's like, everyone should, like, everyone in the town should be putting on a play together. And so that kind of egalitarian approach to art making has always been really exciting to me, and like feels like family. And performing in this, did I mention I'm performing in a circus right now? I forget.
I knew you were, but
yeah. So right now I'm on the lot of the Circus Flora. I'm on the Circus Flora lot right now in St. Louis, performing in a circus for the month of June, and living out a lifelong dream to be a part of something like this. And it also is like art for everybody. Like, a circus means everybody is welcome. Circus is of the body. Circus means family. Circus is facing your fear, being brave in the face of uncertainty. And I think we really go to the circus to see people being courageous. And it's super inspiring to be here, living with folks who've made their whole lives around this form of art.
I want to get back to the circus in a second, but I have like one last question. Outside of your mom's influence, like what stopped you from pushing yourself to like be more of a front-facing artist on your own? Was it just fear? Was there some other emotion going on? Like, what was happening?
Well, I'm an introvert. So I think there's, like a shy kid underneath that I kind of broke out of in my teenage years. I got all of the like embarrassment of being, the stage fright and the embarrassment of like being in front of people at like that age where you're super awkward. Just being on stage helped me to break out of that shyness. I mean, I still have it. I still get really tired if I'm around a lot of people for long periods of time. I have to go and retreat and like be in solitude.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I know much more how to kind of rise above my shyness.
Is it a different mode of being? This might be a difficult question, but let me say it and then I can try to articulate it in a better way if it doesn't make sense. Do you step into a different mode of being when I have to like be a front facing person? It's almost like I have to step into this other mode of being. And I know how to do it, and I can, be, if I'm at a pitching a show or whatever, right, that I can be, I turn on charismatic Andy. And and it's a different mode of being. It's not unnatural, but it's definitely like I have to like move my body in a different, like I know how to like move my body in a different way in this thing. And it's just a different thing. So that's what I guess I'm trying to articulate, is that like, is this a different mode of being for you, or is it just kind of like a natural extension of who you are?
Yeah, I think it's like caffeinated Britt.
Okay.
And it's kind of what else. I don't think it's a different person. It's just like levels of containment, whether it's sort of turning up the volume on myself or turning down the volume.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. like I can perform as myself, and that's a natural extension of me. But anything where I'm like putting on, it's why I'm a mediocre actor. It's like anything where I have to I'm miming putting on like someone else's skin, but like it does.
It looked like you were putting on a big hat.
Anything where I have to put on a 10-gallon hat and pretend to be a cowboy.
I will say, playing Helly, who is unapologetically honest and brave and rebellious, was really refreshing because my natural instinct is not to defy authority. But coming out of playing her for a whole year, I have picked up on some good habits of speaking up for myself when things pinch or ouch. Just something about literally being in her shoes and moving the way she does and speaking up for injustice in the way that she does. And that show has actually impacted my personal life in a really positive way.
Have any other roles done that for, like, after you're done, like say Casual or something like that? Was there anything by the way, I felt so bad for your character. Like from moment one, I knew it was going to be a tragedy in some way, but like, have there been any other roles where you walked away and you're like, oh, it actually affected me or changed me?
I mean, probably every time I play a character, I learn something more about myself and see the world through a different perspective. And I think what's so one of the reasons art is so good for us as humans is because it helps us have more empathy. And especially as an actor, when you're stepping into a role where, like in Casual, she was kind of written on the page as the crazy ex-girlfriend, this kind of archetype of, oh, she's going to come in and, we might roll our eyes at how she is. But it was important to me to not judge her as being crazy and to just come at it from a really, empathetic point of view. And I loved getting to play that role because, first of all, the cast was so incredible and generous. But to step into the shoes of someone who's, at least on the page, looks or feels a certain way, and to try to find more complexity, that's what I'm always trying to do whenever possible.
I want to go to circuses for a second.
Okay.
Actually, first, I want to what did your dad do for a living?
My dad was initially a farm manager for a while, and then he worked for State Farm Insurance for the latter part of his career. And his father was a farmer, and his father was a farmer. So a lot of like agriculture. My dad is the reason I love going camping, because he's a nature lover and a very thoughtful, poetic man.
I went camping once. It rained. I did not enjoy it. I don't even like peeing outside, let alone doing anything else. It's not
okay. I'm also kind of, as you notice, I'm glamping right now. I'm in a camper, which is a lot different than like backpack camping, which I also love to do. But this is, I'm also living on this circus lot right now. So it's a little different than camping.
That I could do. I could live in a little trailer like that for a couple months. That's pretty fun. Or it seems pretty fun, at least.
I
but
think
okay.
So
too. I guess I'm trying to like get it. So you said also before you came from, both sides come from farmers. That's how that's how your family ends up in Hayworth. Is that right?
Yeah. Central Illinois was where. Yeah, Hayworth is where I grew up, and both my parents are from Central Illinois as well.
And it's a tiny town. I saw you describe it somewhere.
Yeah, like one blinking red light. Everybody knew each other's middle names. 50 in my graduating class. Super small.
Do you know how that
and a public school, not a private school, it's a public school.
Do you know how that formed you as a person, being in such a tiny town? It seems like it would be very like panopticon, like everyone's eyes on everyone else. And it seems...
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a great place to grow up in that there was a lot of access to nature and, being able to walk to school in the morning. And there's a real, like having 200 people in your high school is kind of the same as how many people are typically on set. So like with Severance, we had about 200 cast and crew. And so it feels very like a small town, which I think is one of the reasons I love making films and television is like you build this little chosen family, this little neighborhood, small town vibe. But, it's also, I had a longing to get out as well. I really wanted to see the world. And I was really fortunate. My mom also sent me to summer camp in the summer. So when I was 16, I remember it was like the second time I'd ever been on an airplane was when I was 16. And I was and my mom sent me to this summer camp at UCLA. It was like 1 week for music theater and one for on-camera acting. And I was at the airport with my mom, my boyfriend at the time, and his mom. And we were all crying at the airport. It was this very emotional scene because here I was like getting on a plane by myself and heading to Los Angeles. And this was my high school sweetheart. He was like heading to college that next week. It was this very emotional scene. And I'm just so grateful to my mom that she found these opportunities for me to get outside of Hayworth and see, and like go learn about art. Like what a cool thing for her to have done.
Yeah, for sure. But it's almost also that you were introduced at an early age to the possible paths. If you wanted to do this for a living here, like, look, Los Angeles is here. And you'd kind of had some kind of knowledge already that what to do.
Well, I think there was like a small seed planted. I actually met Kate Berlant when I was at that camp. And awesome. I remember
she's from here. That's right.
She's from LA. And I remembered thinking at the time, she is so sophisticated and so like cool and knowledgeable about film. And I felt at the time like a kid from a small town, like a small country town by comparison to Los Angeles in general, not just Kate, but it gave me something to kind of juxtapose my experience of the small town with. And then when I went to Northwestern for college, I had a similar, like my first few years there, feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, like the other kids in school, like knew more about art or something than I did. And again, I think it was so good for me to get out of that comfort zone and also for the first time at Northwestern and at camp in the summer to be around other kids who I felt like were weird like me.
Right.
And to just, it's like weird art kids, like scrappy, weird art kids.
Yeah.
To like be around other weird, scrappy art kids is so nice, so refreshing.
Yeah. Also, that's not a fair comparison. Kate's dad is a she contemporary artist. That's not fair for you to have to compare yourself to the child of a she modern artist.
Well, she was aspirational. Still is. I think she's so brilliant, and I love the Poog podcast. I'm obsessed with her and Jacqueline Novak.
Yeah, Jacqueline's great. So you said weird kid or weird art kid. Were you like that in high school? Because the picture that is in my head of you is like basketball star and like theater person. I didn't picture you as like quote unquote weird art kid, but did you feel like that, or were you painted like that in high school?
Yeah, I think so. I was very, I had a very rich inner life, and I kind of felt a bit odd by comparison. I mean, it was a small school. So, I mean, I also was like in the marching band and I'm on the speech team, and like you could just do everything, because like we needed people to have a chess team, to have, but I was kind of, I could kind of get along with every group, but I felt most at home with like the kids I'd make theater with in the summertime, or doing the plays with.
Okay. Because the thing I was also thinking of was like when you said you like how a film crew, there's something familiar about a film crew because it was the same size as your high school. I was like, oh, well, then there must be some like sense of like when you make something, a feeling of nostalgia that's enjoyable. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's
Totally.
enjoyable, then your high school experience couldn't have been bad.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say my high school experience was bad at all. I think I just felt like when I went to summer camp, or like when, met other people who made things, I felt more at home.
Yeah. So it seems also because there were so few people there relatively that like you had to become kind of a jack of all trades being in all these different activities.
Yeah, totally.
Was that fulfilling, or was it just like, well, they need someone to play trumpet. I don't know. I forgot what you played, but like
I played the trumpet.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you?
I didn't even say that. I did play the trumpet.
That was a pure guess. Maybe I'm just intuitive.
I think, what is that quote? The Shakespeare quote, it's like better to be a master, or what is the master of all trades than a,
I know Macbeth's soliloquy and that's it.
Something about, oh gosh, I don't know where this is going.
I know. You don't even have to say it. I know kind of what you're talking about.
There's like an addendum to it that people don't often say, which is like better than a master of one. It's like better, master. Oh my gosh, cut this part of it out. I
enjoy the fumbling. It makes me feel better.
Well, it's the idea is something about, okay, I'll switch metaphors. I think it's good to like a lot of different kinds of music because it helps your brain to understand how different people form songs. Mm-hmm. And so I think knowing how to do a lot of different kinds of things, even if it's only like mediocre, is cool. It's like 95 degrees in here right now. I think my brain is melting.
So, I know exactly how you're feeling. Okay, well, last question then, because I want to wrap back to circuses, because again, the picture I painted in my head of you was kind of like whimsical, and you're
what?
Much more grounded. I think extremely grounded. But this is where I'm like kind of curious, and I'm trying to figure out like how to encapsulate in one word. I don't think there is. I don't think I can figure out a word that means like grounded whimsy, or at least I don't have that word in my vocabulary. But like, cause circuses to me, I mean, there is this kind of like I was gonna say buy into, but more than that, to really be part of a circus in like the intended understanding of circus, like, because to me, like a circus is like, I don't know, some guy, like I think of carnies, I think of like film noir, where it's like the dark side of circuses. And it's a bunch of people who are kind of like outcasts or something like that. And then there's this more like high-minded, like a Cirque du Soleil or something like that, or like maybe the circus you're involved in. And I'm kind of curious about like what it represents to you and how that like, how you fit into it. Like, what does it mean for you to perform in a circus?
Circus performers are the most heart-centered, hardworking people I've ever met. They're equal parts wonderment and pragmatism. They're incredibly disciplined. And so, yes, they fly through the air. They defy gravity. They make the impossible possible. And they have to be extremely grounded in order to do what they do. And part of what I'm really excited about in developing this longer format project about the circus is breaking down some of those stereotypes you mentioned. First of all, you should never call a circus performer a carny. That's different than a carnival, like with rides and games. Those are, it's just a different thing than a circus performance. But it's very, it's very common, like people conflate the two words. And this idea that circus is a dying art form. In America, we have a different relationship to circus than they do overseas. But it's a really noble tradition. And when you get to know these circus performers who've dedicated their lives to inspiring people, and there's this kind of what I love about watching circus is it's kind of this like, get a load of this, and then they'll do something that is just totally incredible. And they've dedicated their lives to pushing the limits of what a human is capable of. And they're doing it as a chosen family, which to me is such a great model for inclusivity and living within a small community. I mean, as I'm walking around the lot, there are like 4 or 5 different languages that are being spoken, and everyone comes together to put on a show. There can't be a better metaphor for like, hey, let's like learn how to be together, even though we're different.
What is it about like having a chosen family? Because it seems like you grew up in a family, like a functional family, right? Like in my brain, the dialectic is something like, oh, well, if a person didn't have a good childhood, they're looking for a chosen family. Like, what is it for you that is appealing about that facet of it?
I don't know. I mean, family is super important to me, my given family for sure. And, I obviously made art with my mom and, my brother too, when we were kids, but I think it's about community, and coming from different perspectives and what you can learn from each other, having come from a totally different experience. So,
okay, yeah. I think I get it. Wait, let me throw this at you and see if this makes sense at all. Because like when you were younger, art and family is so intertwined that you are seeking out those kind of contexts. This is total armchair psychology. I am acknowledging that as I say it, but like you are seeking out context where those things intertwine as an adult, and the circus is that kind of exact context.
Yeah, I think that's correct, and it's also occurring to me like making art is a love language for me, and being playful. My acting teacher in college always said like it's called a play because that's your job, is to play. And so having like a playmate who becomes your family through making art together is, that's my love language. Like, I just love, same with improv. Like just to play and to create something on the spot. There's no greater bonding experience.
Yeah, me too. In fact, probably to my own detriment, where like, suddenly all my friendships have to be like, oh, this is great. We're just riffing on something. Let's make this. Mm-hmm. Or like my wife is like, can we just like make a joke, a private joke, and not turn it into a screenplay? or like into a thing we have to write together or do something together. And I'm like, yes, there should be not every single thing, but yes, I 100% identify with that.
Yeah. And everyday art too, or just like when you get on a riff with someone like on a road trip and you're just like cracking each other up from like some pattern that you're building that no one else like could ever understand. Like that's my love language. Like, laughter that makes no sense. And I don't know. It's so hot here.
Britt, yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to keep you any longer.
It's 50% humidity here, and we're performing we're doing 10 shows a week, and the tent gets real hot, turns out.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what's the schedule? Like matinees on the weekends and...
Yeah, so two a days on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we do a kid show, like a shorter version of the show on Wednesdays, and we have Mondays off.
How Broadway?
Yeah, it's very Broadway.
But seriously, thank you for talking with me. It was
my pleasure. This is my first podcast, I think.
For real?
I think my first like long format podcast. Is that true? Maybe I've done a couple of others, but this feels like the first one.
How did you feel? Good or bad, or some other emotion?
I was out of my comfort zone. Definitely felt a little fearful at the beginning, and then felt a little better in the middle, and then I got fearful again that I was saying too many run-on sentences. And right now, I'm feeling just fine.
Good. Okay, I'm glad we could end on a good note as opposed to like, and I'm back to feeling fearful.
And I'm terrified again. No, I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for having me. This was so thoughtful, and thanks for solving my, what did you solve?
I don't know if we solved anything, but it was certainly interesting. Interesting, enjoyable, a fun time. So thanks again so much. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye.